All right, everyone, it's time to get the meeting called to order, please. Good afternoon and welcome to the Cinco de Mayo 2022 meeting of the City Plan Commission. My name is Chris Cummings, Chair of the Commission. I call this meeting to order at 1:35 p.m. Ms. Lori will read the statement of the public.
Statement to the public. The City Plan Commission has sole and final approval authority over subdivision maps, which is statutorily limited to the ministerial examination of the application's conformance to all applicable code provisions. The staff report for an agenda item may include conditions, exceptions, or modifications. The Commission may approve the item with all staff report conditions, exceptions, or modifications, including additional measures regarding the item as imposed by the Commission. Otherwise, the staff report, with all modifications, exceptions, and conditions, is approved and the applicant shall comply with all provisions of the staff report. Commissioners will consider all agenda items other than subdivision items in the form of a public hearing. The normal process is as follows. First, the Commission will hear a staff report followed by a statement from the applicant. Then members of the public may speak, followed by any final statement from the applicant. Finally, the matter will be closed. The Commission shall then make a recommendation that will be forwarded to City Council.
Thank you. I think we're having microphone issues, so Raul,
Yes, sir.
are there
Good
any changes?
afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. Raul Garcia, Planning Inspections. We do have one deletion from the agenda. That's item number 4. Again, item number 4 is to be deleted. Other than that, just as a note, there are 3 items on the consent agenda, 3 items on the consent agenda, and several revised staff reports. That is all.
Thank you, Raul. Can I get a motion to approve the changes, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Anyone here to speak generally from the public? Nope. Okay. Can I get a motion or more discussion on the consent agenda, please?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 5, please.
Good afternoon. One moment while I bring up the presentation. Okay, is it up for everyone?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission. This is George Olmos with Planning and Inspections. This item is Simmering Canyon Unit 7. This is a major combination application. This development is located within the city of El Paso, north of Northern Pass Drive and east of Resler Drive. Primary access to the subdivision is proposed from Bobcat Hollow Drive.
George, sorry, if you can wait a moment. IT, if you can share the
Yeah, of
Teams screen? Oh, okay, thanks. Just a moment. Okay, you can go ahead, George.
Shall I repeat that slide or can I proceed normally?
I think you just start from this slide.
Okay. This development is located within the city of El Paso, north of Northern Pass Drive and east of Resler Drive. Primary access to the subdivision is proposed from Bobcat Hollow Drive. Here we can see the proposed final plat superimposed over existing conditions. The applicant is proposing to subdivide 15.805 acres of land to create a residential subdivision comprising of 58 single-family lots. The lots range from approximately 7,400 to 12,000 square feet in size. Drainage will be provided by sheet flow to a subsurface storm sewer system. This application was granted vested rights under the Rancho Las Lomas land study and was reviewed under the former subdivision code that was in effect in 2003. The Rancho Las Lomas land study was approved by the City Plan Commission on December 4th, 2003. The proposed development is in conformance with the approved land study. Here we can see the preliminary plat. And here we have the final plat. And on this slide, we can see the existing parkland's proximity to the subdivision. And shown here is the proposed subdivision and its current location within the Rancho Las Lomas land study, outlined in red. The applicant is requesting one modification pursuant to El Paso City Code Section 19.04.170, modifications of conditions of the applicable code. The modification is as follows: to allow for 5 feet of sidewalk and 5 feet of landscape parkway, and to waive 4 feet of roadway. Here we can see the required cross sections and the proposed cross sections. And here we can see the existing conditions. The application meets the following criteria under section 19.04.170A3, modifications of conditions of the former subdivision code for requesting modifications. The increased parkway size that is proposed provides better access for...
If those on Teams who are not speaking, please mute yourself. And IT, if we can have your assistants muting those. Thank you.
The increased parkway size that is proposed provides better access for pedestrians, and the reduced roadway will be conducive to residential uses. The proposed right-of-way for Simmering Drive and Simmering Gap Drive are consistent with and exceed current DSC standards. Staff recommends approval of Simmering Canyon Unit 7 on a major combination basis and approval of the modification requests. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Olmos. Any questions for staff? Could we look at the cross-section one more time? Thanks. Okay, can we hear from the representative, please? CSA Group.
If the applicant for item number 5 will please unmute themselves, *6 if you're on the phone. Again, we're looking for CSA Design Group for Cimarron Canyon Unit 7.
I don't disagree.
It would appear the applicant is not present for this item.
So I motion to postpone this for 2 weeks.
Second.
I,
Gutierrez.
so this is under the 30-day time clock.
30-day time clock. Huh? We can.
What I may suggest to the commission is we can push it back to the end of the meeting, and then we can work on getting the applicant on the phone,
Okay, thanks.
so we can still move forward.
So we'll table this item to after item 10. Thanks. Okay, item number 6, please.
Mr. Chair, if we can just get a formal motion to push this back after item 10,
Sure.
to table it till after item 10.
Is motion to move item 5 to the end of the meeting?
Gutierrez, second.
All those,
If we can, after item 10, I believe,
After item 10.
please. Thank you.
get a second.
Gutierrez, second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thanks. Okay, item number 5, please. Sorry, item number 6. My bad.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission. David Samaniego with Planning and Inspections. Item number 6 on the agenda is Fresno Place Replat B, a re-subdivision combination application. Okay, this development is located east of Riverside Drive and south of Alameda Avenue within District 7. The subdivision is proposing access from Fresno Drive, and this development is being reviewed under the current subdivision code. This is the plat superimposed on the aerial map. The applicant proposes to re-subdivide 4.13 acres of land into 14 duplex lots, 1 commercial lot, and 1 pond site. This is the preliminary plat. And the final plat. And a few things to point out on the final plat. Again, there are 14 duplex lots, 1 commercial lot, and that's the most northern lot, the large lot located on the northern portion of the plat. In addition, there's a private pond site shown in purple and a 15-foot wide private alley, and that provides access for lots 1 through 8. In addition, the applicant has dedicated 10 feet of additional right-of-way along Fresno Drive That's the portion of road going north to south, and that's to meet the proportionate share of right-of-way width for a local street. And the applicant is requesting 2 exception requests per the current subdivision code. The first request is to allow the existing improvements to remain in place. This is along Fresno Drive, and to waive the requirement to widen the roadway and to install the sidewalk in a new alignment. The required and proposed cross-sections are shown below. On the proposed cross-section, the applicant is dedicating 10 additional feet to meet their proportionate share of right-of-way width for a local street. However, the sidewalk alignment does not meet the current DSC standard, as it does not have a 5-foot landscape parkway between the sidewalk and the roadway. Normally, you have the roadway, landscape parkway, and then the sidewalk. These sidewalk improvements were constructed by the city within the last 5 years. As such, the applicant is requesting the exception based on the existing conditions within a quarter of a mile, and this is per section 19.10.0501A, roadway participation policies, improvement of roads and utilities within and abutting the subdivision. And the second exception request is to allow for a private street. This is per section 19.15.150A, private streets. And this request is for Marfam Place, and you can see that highlighted there. Evaluating the request as per section 19.10.050A1A, roadway participation policies, the City Plan Commission may waive such requirements to provide rights-of-way or street improvements. In this case, A, based on the factor that 50% of the lots within a quarter mile of the proposed development have already been developed and the existing street improvements are in character with the neighborhood. And in looking at the second request for the private street, per section 19.15.150A, the private streets may not be part of the adopted thoroughfare plan, and the private street shall meet the requirements for right-of-way width and improvements for a public street. Marfam Place is not part of the adopted thoroughfare plan. In addition, Marfam Place meets the requirements for a local street, and you can see the cross-section there, 52 feet right-of-way with 2 10-foot parkways showing with a 5-foot landscape parkway and a 5-foot sidewalk. These are the existing conditions along Fresno Drive looking in the southerly direction. The subject property is on the right-hand side, and it shows the roadway and sidewalk in its current configuration. And again, the sidewalk improvement was done within the past 5 years by the city. Notices were mailed to property owners within 200 feet on April 2nd of this year. As of today, the Planning Division has received 1 phone call of inquiry and 2 emails of opposition, but no communication support to the request. And with that, staff recommends approval of Fresno Place Replat B on a re-subdivision combination basis and approval of the exception request subject to the following condition: that per section 19.23.040H3C of the El Paso City Code, the City Plan Commission require the applicant to landscape the parkway at the rear of all double frontage lots. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for staff? So the city built those within the last 5 years and they didn't do it according to the standard?
Right, so you look at the conditions, there's some grade changes along the sidewalk, and that might be one of the reasons. But the 10-foot dedication is there in the future if they want to do a realignment or redo that. But it's pretty much in the character. The whole street is in that condition.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can we hear from the representative, please?
Good afternoon, City Plan Commission. My name is Sammy Romero with H2 Otero, and we agree with all staff comments.
Thanks. Any questions for staff? Applicant? Go ahead.
I noticed in one of the comments, an email that there was vetting with the neighborhood association, but no follow-up. Could you describe that to us, the lack of follow-up?
With the neighborhood association,
Lincoln Park?
I don't-
Sir, I think that maybe refers to the rezoning case in 2018.
Oh.
There's a outreach to the neighborhood association.
Oh,
But as part of the subdivision, the only requirement is the notice to 200 feet. I did also we got an email from the neighborhood association, Ms. Carrion, Subject Carrion, that they don't have any objections to the plat.
oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Nope, this is a public hearing, and I have Ms. Sylvia Carrion signed up to speak. I don't know if Ms. Carrion is on the phone. If so, star 6 to unmute yourself. And I don't see her here.
If Ms. Carry-On is on the phone, star 6. This is for item number 6, the Fresno Place Replat B subdivision.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else signed up to speak on this item? There are no, lots of folks signed up, but they didn't list the item number, so speak now, or we'll move on. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Guzman.
Second, Stout.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 7, please.
Okay, so can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission. Once again, George Olmos with Planning and Inspections. This item is the UTEP Alley vacation, a right-of-way vacation application that was postponed from April 21st, 2022. The right-of-way proposed to be vacated is located within the city of El Paso, east of Mesa Street and north of I-10, shown here, outlined in orange. Area requested to be vacated is 0.096 acres in size. The applicant's request is to vacate an unimproved alley in order to allow for the development of the lot. There is no easement, utility easement infrastructure within the area to be vacated. Here we have a picture showing existing conditions of the right-of-way, which, as previously mentioned, is unimproved. Notice of public hearing was published in the El Paso Times on April 5th, 2022. Notices were mailed to property owners within 200 feet from the alley on April 5th, 2022. The Planning Division has not received any communication in support of or in opposition to the request. Staff recommends approval of the UTEP Alley vacation request. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olmos, for presenting that again to us. Any questions for staff? Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Bobby Gonzalez with Quantum Engineering representing UTEP and the UT system. We have no objections and we're in agreement with all staff comments.
Any questions for the applicant? Were you all on this before, or are you newly hired?
I'm sorry?
Were you all on this project before, or are you newly hired?
We are actually doing the civil engineering design for this, for the new facility.
We're having a little trouble with folks showing up to the meetings, so that's why we had to postpone and present it twice. So is this?
I don't think I've been up here before
No.
for this particular
I
project.
know. Whoever was representing this last time didn't show up, I guess is the point I'm making.
I'm
So
not exactly sure why.
I don't think, but you weren't listed on there, so
No.
whoever that was a no-show.
Well, I apologize, but no, that wasn't me.
If it wasn't you, no problem, but it's, staff's time, unfortunately. But any other questions or entertain a motion?
Mr. Chair, if I might just pause for a moment. We noticed that there's an error in the conference ID that I would like to announce there to anyone that is on viewing this online. Again, the phone number to dial in is area code 915-213-4096. Again, 915-213-4096. And the conference ID, at the prompt, you'll enter this number that I'm about to read off. 829-435-214 Again, 829-435-214
And also, this is a public hearing, so I did have Ms. Susan Ovina signed up, but are you all together? Okay, we're good then. Anyone else signed up to speak on this? Please star 6 to unmute yourself. Nope. Okay, thanks. Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, Diana Gutierrez, move to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, item number 8, please.
You can see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Andrew Salom with Planning Inspections. Item number 8 on the agenda is a rezoning application for subject property located generally north of Trans Mountain Road and east of I-10. The subject property is 48.71 acres in size and
Can-
is currently vacant.
Can we pause a second to get to full screen? IT.
IT, can you remove the bottom banner, please?
The applicant is requesting to rezone the subject property from R5 condition to C2 with conditions and R5 special permit to C2 commercial, and this is for proposed commercial development.
Mr. Saloom, can we pause, please? We need this to be full screen because it's pretty detailed. Do you all have a back channel to IT over there?
Andrew, if you can see if you can decrease the, I guess that bar there on the right.
You know what, on mine it has full screen. Let me go ahead and close it and reopen it. Is it full screen now?
No.
Perhaps IT can go ahead and bring it up. And it will eliminate the right bar.
I think, Mr. Chair, that's about as good as long as they're sharing from Teams. That's probably the extent. Obviously, when we share here from council chambers, we can have the full screen.
Okay. Mr. Sloom, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, let me get back to the screen. Okay, so the applicant is requested to rezone the subject property from R5 with conditions to C2 with conditions, and R5 special permit to C2 commercial for proposed commercial development. This rezoning request is to satisfy condition number 4 of ordinance 19286, is dated February 1st of 2022, and that's the blue, bright blue lines on the slide. Plan El Paso future land use map for the Northwest Planning Area designates the property for G4 suburban walkable. The conceptual plan does show commercial development, and that would be the red structures on the slide. Although the Arroyo is part of the rezoning request, the Arroyo areas will remain undeveloped. Access to the subject property is provided from Northwest, Wrestler, and Hunter Foster. This is subject property. The surrounding properties are all undeveloped, with abutting properties to the north and east zoned R5 residential. Properties to the south are zoned R5 as well and C2 commercial, and properties to the west are zoned C3 commercial. Public notices were mailed out to property owners within 300 feet on April 21st of 2022. The Planning Division did not receive any communication in support or opposition of the rezoning request from the public. Staff does recommend approval with conditions of the rezoning request, as proposed rezoning is in keeping with the policies of the G4 suburban walkable land use designation of Plan El Paso, the city's comprehensive plan, and the condition are as follows. Condition 1, the 10-foot landscape buffer with high-profile native and naturalized trees at least 2-inch caliper and 10 feet in height shall be placed 20 feet on center along the property lines adjacent to the residential zone district or uses. The landscape buffer shall be irrigated and maintained by the property owner at all times and shall be installed prior to the issuance of certificates of occupancy. A, the condition shall not apply to where the existing arroyo will serve as a natural buffer between the subject properties and the residential zone district or uses. Also, the landscape required under this condition will count towards the landscape requirement under Title 18. Condition 2, that detailed site plans shall be reviewed and approved per El Paso City Code prior to building permits. And condition 3, a minimum of 500-foot distance be required between any establishments meeting both of the following criteria. A, establishments deriving 51% or more of their income from the sale of alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption, and B is providing outdoor amplified sound. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I do, Mr. Chair. Can you explain again what the 500 feet between, I don't seem to get it. I know we went through it last time, but.
Yeah, I can definitely assist with that, Raul Garcia, planning inspection. So similar to the item that was presented last week, that condition would apply to any businesses, only to businesses that would meet both of those criteria. They have to be both. They have to meet both criteria. One, that they derive their income 51% or more from alcoholic beverages, which is essentially your bars, and in combination with outdoor amplified sound, which, and again, that's coming from the issues that we've been dealing with here recently, the clash between these types of businesses and adjacent residential.
So basically, it's not building to building. It's like,
Correct.
if there's a bar in one place, then it's got to be 500 feet away from that bar for another bar to be.
Correct.
Instead of going
we've-
1 to 1 to 1, right?
But again, as was Kevin Smith with planning inspections for the record, so it has to be a bar with the outdoor sound, because that's a lot of the concerns that we've been hearing from the community over the past number of months. Is those two in combination are being problematic for residential neighborhoods. So if it doesn't meet one of those criteria, then technically they could be right next to each other. But then the outdoor amplified sound wouldn't be allowed, or the sale of alcoholic beverages if it's over 51%.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Any estimates on the number of bars that decide not to use amplified sound in order to be able to avoid some of these regulations?
So I don't, in the city,
Yeah.
so there are two things and that is actually addressed in a different ordinance. That is what, Title 9 or Title 9, I believe. So on that, only certain provisions would apply where they'd have to come in. The main concern is obviously with the proximity to residential. So areas such as downtown, that is exempt. So you can have the noise present and not have to send out the notification and go through that process. I don't have a number in terms of how many don't have the outdoor sound.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Saloom, can you explain 1B as the condition?
That is the landscaping buffer. That's in addition to the landscape. It's it's more than 15%. Let me go back. It's a 10 feet of landscaping buffer for plus another 15% requirement. But since it's the arroyo, they're going to use that as a natural buffer.
But the B is the part I'm curious of. So if they use the buffer, that counts towards their 15%?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Is that always the way it is?
Yes, yeah, so that condition is essentially just further clarifying standard in the code.
Okay.
Yeah, just per with discussions, that was something he wanted 100% clarification on.
Got you. Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
First, we want to thank staff for all their assistance regarding this application. We do appreciate it. And last, we do concur with all staff's comments.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I'd love to ask a question, please. So concerning the arroyo behind the northern portion of this, how, are there any plans to use the arroyo as part of, I mean, just visually? I see a lot of buildings. Are they oriented towards a view of the arroyo? Or is this clearly back of house planning?
I guess that's a more difficult question, because if you're asking if this arroyo is being treated for any like recreational purposes, no.
No, not actual physical
In
occupation.
terms of being provided as
Just a
amenity.
visual kind of, because it is a beautiful arroyo.
Correct. And now that's something we'll have to get to I guess that's why you have the detailed site plan. So
Right.
for each project as it develops abutting it, because you've heard the two arguments. One, put the building up front, put the parking in the back, which then
Right.
you don't enjoy the view of the arroyo.
Right.
Or you can put the parking up front and then have the back with a patio facing the arroyo, which is a very nice view as well. So
Indeed.
there is a trade-off. So that's something that'll be obviously taken care of at the time of each site when it gets designed specifically for that to see how that'll work.
Okay,
But obviously, yeah, if it can be utilized, I don't see why it wouldn't be.
right. I would feel the same way.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a public hearing. If there are any folks signed up to speak, I see Mr. Dayub is signed up. Come on up, Mr. Dayub.
Good afternoon. For the record, Richard Dayu, representing Southwest Land. I just signed up to speak in the event that there were additional questions. Having heard none, I have nothing else to add, so we can make this a shorter visit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Any other one else signed up to speak? *6 to unmute yourself. Otherwise, entertain a motion or further discussion.
Motion to approve, Guzman?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Commissioners, we do thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 9, please.
Mr. Chair, if I might, Kevin Smith, Plan Inspections, for the record, we request that item number 9 be postponed for 2 weeks for further coordination. And the owner does concur with that
Okay,
request.
thank you.
Motion to postpone item 9 for 2 weeks.
Second, Diana.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 10, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission. Saul Pena with Planning and Inspections. Item 10 on the agenda is a detailed site development plan. Request for the property located at 12712 Weco Club Road, near the corner of Montana Avenue and Weco Club Road in District 5. The applicant is requesting a detailed site development plan approval to allow for an office warehouse complex. Here we see an aerial view of the subject property, comprising of a vacant lot to be developed. Here we have the existing zoning surrounding the property. Properties to the north and west are zoned C4 commercial. Properties to the south are zoned SD special development. Properties to the east are zoned R5 residential and are located within the 5-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. Here we see a detailed site plan showing the development. The applicant is proposing to develop a 7.65-acre office warehouse complex with 6 buildings ranging from 9,600 to 16,000 square feet in size. Vehicle access will be provided from Hueco Club Road, a local road classified under the City of El Paso's major thoroughfare plan, and also off of Montana Avenue, since there is a shared access agreement between those two properties. The site plan meets the landscape, drainage, and parking requirements per code. Here we have a closer look at the structural elevations. Here we see an arrow with the site plan superimposed. Here we have the front view of the subject property. And here we see the surrounding development. Properties to the north and south are zoned R3 residential and include single-family dwellings. To the north is a vacant lot zoned C4C, commercial conditions. To the south is a single-family residential development zoned SC special development. To the west are commercial establishments zoned C4C, commercial conditions. And to the east is part of a residential mobile home park located within El Paso's 5-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction, as well as the Beast or the East Side Regional Park, proposed and located within the R5 residential zone. To conclude, staff recommends approval of the request per section 20.04.150D of the City of El Paso Municipal Code. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes has a question. Drainage? No?
No, I saw a basin in there, so we're good.
Any other questions for staff?
I wonder how far away is this development going to be from Hueco Tanks State Park?
Far away.
Far.
It's on Montana, probably 20
Yeah, if
20
possible.
miles.
If possible, I can defer that question to the applicant as well, so that he can provide more details regarding that.
Yeah, I just, my concern is the state treasure, right outside of our boundaries. And we wouldn't want to disturb that with warehouses and trucks and all the rest.
Yeah, if I might, Kevin Smith with Planning Inspection. So this is located south of Montana, near
It's where the old Waco Club used to be.
near Rich Beam, and so it's specifically off Waco Club. So if you're familiar with the new City of El Paso Regional Park, I believe it's entitled The Beast, which has the aquatic center, and it's going to be a significant development over the next number of years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in proximity to that development. So it's well away from the state park.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Two things. One, it says commercial conditions. What does that mean? Because I didn't see any conditions.
That was part of a rezone that was done a couple of years ago, but other than that, those conditions only suggest that the applicant needs to submit a detailed site development plan in order for the City Planning Commission to review it. That's the only condition stated on the ordinance.
Okay, and I guess my second question would be, this is a public hearing, but I didn't see any mails went out. Did
No.
any letters went out or anything? Because I didn't see anything.
Because this is just a detailed site development plan application. Notices are not required to be delivered to neighbors surrounding that property.
So doesn't that cut-
correct?
Then how can it be a public hearing if nobody from the public gets notified? That's my,
Yes, sir. So that is accomplished by the posting of the agenda, which is publicly available, accessible online. And as Mr. Pina mentioned, those requirements are established by state code. When it comes to public notice, it is clearly stated that applies to special permits, rezonings, condition amendments. Again, when we have a detailed site plan, the zoning's already there. A lot of times it's already platted. It's kind of just it's more of a certification of the development that does require to be placed on the agenda, and still does require the CPC approval. But again, it's pretty routine, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, maybe we can do something about it, because I would hate to be those neighbors on the back. How far are the houses from the proposed?
They're pretty much right to each other.
Yeah, so if they don't, I can guarantee you that if we went out there and asked all those neighbors, they would be opposing all this.
Right, so, and again, every case is different, but that's what happens at the rezonings, right? That's exactly what happens. The public notice goes out to everybody within 300 feet, as well as the neighborhood associations. Again, this rezoning happened, I don't know exactly when, it has already happened. And again, we're just at the point, and the only reason we're here is because of that condition for the site plan, which again is pretty straightforward, and as Mr. Pina presented, does comply with our requirements.
How long ago was that rezoning? Do you remember?
It notes it 2007.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, the rezoning, I guess, as Raul noted, it would have taken place at that time, and then the condition was placed on. And just similar to a subdivision is once a rezoning happens, we heard one today, the zoning lies with the property. When it comes in times for development, we don't notify. It's not a requirement to notify the abutting property owners. As Raul noted, it's more of in these instances, more like a certification of the meeting the code.
Right. Once they're rezoned, they're entitled to do whatever it can in that zoning district, right? So, any other questions? Okay, can we hear from the applicant, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Javier Carrera with Carrera Group, Inc. We concur with staff comments.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Carrera. Oh, there's one question.
We've been developing a kind of a precedent, it's not a policy, for the developer to consult with neighborhood associations in advance of coming back for whatever you want to do. Do you have any plans to do that?
Can you repeat that question, please?
We've reviewed a number of cases in recent months where the developer has gone to the local neighborhood association to consult with residents before coming back with a detailed plan and back to the commission. Do you have any plans to consult with the residents and/or neighborhood association in the area?
Probably for future development, because it's not required for a detailed site plan review. That what you're stating right now is required for a rezoning, which we are not involved in right now.
If I might somewhat address that as well, Commissioner Stout. So one of the requirements for rezoning is notification, at least written notification, obviously, of a proposed rezoning on a property. But one thing as staff that we try and encourage as much as we can, it starts when we have what's called a pre-application meeting with the applicant. Before they even submit, we tell them and strongly encourage them to start developing that relationship, do the outreach with the neighborhood beforehand, tell them what the project is, a proposal, just so that as it goes through the process, people are well informed of what's coming on board. Now, whether they do that or not, that's up to them, but the minimum requirement, at least for rezoning, is the written notification. However, we as staff strongly encourage, and also with we strongly encourage for them to have this outreach, and I believe also they're getting hopefully they're observing the commissioner strongly encouraging and pushing for that outreach, that collaboration beforehand, just so you get that support, or that they're able to get well informed, so that able to hopefully find a path forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? If not, we move to further discussion or a motion, please.
guess it just boils down again, Mr. Chair, about the best practices. I don't think this is the best practice. I mean, I get what staff is saying, but there's a big loophole here. Back when it got rezoned, where did they mail out the letters? There was nobody there. There was no houses. There was nothing. So I guess it just boils down again to best practices. What are we going to do about it?
Assistant City Attorney. Yeah, I agree with you. Unfortunately, it's state law, and for us to change that, it'd have to be changed at the state level.
Well, since you're the city attorney, you need to help us because you've seen how we think this commission thinks. So why don't you give us some input of what we can do?
Let me
you what you can do.
let me.
Staff has told you what you can do.
Excuse me, real quick. Excuse me, real quick. This comes back down to, frankly, this commission. We need a flow chart that shows how subdivisions work, how rezoning works, because there are misunderstandings happening up here about our ability to intervene in things. And so if we need to do more sort of trainings that you guys do, today might have been a good day since it's a light agenda, but, we can't do much except approve or disapprove of a site development plan. It has nothing to do with the neighbors, it has nothing to do with notifications, and we need to be made aware of that. We need to be educated on that stuff. When it comes to subdivision rules that the state law dictates, I'm not gonna, as the chairman, I'm not gonna vote or suggest that anyone else continues down the road to say, we're gonna change state law. We have to do our job, abide by the law that Mr. Ablin helps us abide by. In this case, that's just a matter of circumstance. They did it, in 2007? No one lived there. And so, the rezoning was an easy case. They didn't have to notify anybody, but there's nothing we can do about that at this point. I mean, it's unfortunate those folks moved there. If they moved to a property that abuts this property and they saw that it was C4, then they could know anything's going to go there. I mean, that's just sort of for the neighbors to have their own educated, opinion about where they're going to buy a property. So I think we need to limit our sort of ire at staff that they're not doing what we want them to, because they're following the law, they're following the rules, and they're advising us the best they can, and keeping us out of trouble. We don't want to be, postponing subdivisions to the point where we're being personally sued. There's some issues here that we have to trust them, and we need a little more education, so you can trust us.
So Mr. Chair, if I might, I think that's a wonderful idea to have that training. We developed some in the past, almost a cradle to grave, if you will, of a given property, of a development, so that we can walk through some of the major steps, some of the major items that come before the City Plan Commission on a regular basis, so you're informed of that.
And I'm aware you all do an annual training. It's great.
But I think
annual meeting's awesome, but we do need some refreshers. Show me a flow chart that shows subdivision to rezoning to detailed site development plan, so that we're aware of where there's public input, where we have influence, where we're doing our ministerial duties.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm taking down notes on these to address them.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd just like to add real quick, I appreciate those comments as well, and we have no problems kind of hitting the major spots, right, the major points that CPC commissioners have to understand, but I just hope that that's enough. It is a lot of things that we handle as staff. That's what we do. That's a second language to us. We take that deep dive and make sure that everything complies with the code. That happens for months before we even get to this point at CPC. But I understand commissioners need to feel informed to make that right decision, so we're happy to do that. Just please understand, I mean, it's impossible to understand everything, right? Because there's so much going on. That's our job. Our job is to make sure that once these projects get in front of you, they comply with the code. But we're happy to, like I said, probably hit on those major points. So hopefully it's something that can be better understood by the commission.
I mean, for instance, the neighborhood interaction, you know, it's going to be to staff's advantage to reach out to the neighborhood and start that from the very beginning, because the neighborhoods don't want to be blindsided, and that will just be a backlash to staff. So, you know, they do from the moment before the applications are turned in, they're already working with those neighborhoods, and it would be rare that they weren't. I mean, in the ETJ, I don't know. That's a little more difficult, but I trust that staff is always approaching those neighborhood associations. I'm in the Mission Hills Neighborhood Association, and they're very good about informing us of any upcoming issues and if we want to be involved.
So, and we'd be happy to give that training here in one of the coming meetings. Again, addressing it from the very beginning, as well as the points, a lot of the efforts that we go through as staff that are more maybe behind the scenes, so that helps better inform the commission about the whole process of going from point A, which is, say, the virgin land, to point B, well, probably point, Z, which is the end product where a business or a property is functional and operating, or residents are able to move to.
There's an iceberg there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the work you all are doing and what we actually see here.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy, and we'd be happy to give that training here, and we'll start working on that.
I have a question.
Wait, do you mind if we're unfortunately holding this one item up that also has public hearing? Can we move this kind of discussion to just the end? So that
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you to the staff for what they're doing. As part of our motion, if we move to approve this, can we add to that the developer contact the new residents that are there now before they proceed with their development? Can we make that part of the motion?
I would be reluctant to do that, because for one, that's also setting a precedent for future site plans, and it is not a code requirement. The staff is recommending approval. It meets all the provisions of the zoning code and meets the requirements of the site plan. So we just recommend it be at that. If the applicant wishes to do that, I will leave that upon them. But I would advise that that not be part of the condition of approval.
Okay, thank you.
Can we entertain a motion?
Commissioner Lori, I move to approve this.
Castro, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 No.
No.
Motion passes.
Elsa, if you wouldn't mind just please doing a roll call to confirm, please.
Okay, I'm going to take account on that vote. I'm going to call your names and just tell me if you're aye or nay. Stout? Aye. Cummings?
Aye.
Lori? Orahel Gutierrez?
No.
Castro? Guzman?
No.
And Reyes?
Aye.
So we have 5 ayes and 2 noes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, item number 5. We need to revive. Sorry, Mr. Rodriguez. We have a lingering item back there that we need to deal with. Is that CSA group there? On the line?
Is CSA on the line? You can press *6.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi, this is Adrian Ontiveros with CSA Design Group. I apologize. I guess there was an incorrect conference ID and I couldn't chime in when I was called upon.
Got you.
So I guess just I concur with staff comments. I'm here if you have any other questions, please.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? No. Okay, thank you, sir. I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve, Guzman?
Second, Gutierrez.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, Mr. Rodriguez, we're ready for your item. Onward, Alameda.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to the City Plan Commission. Today, we are here to present for your recommendation the Onward Alameda Corridor Study. We started this process back in August, September of last year with a formal project kickoff week. In August, a virtual workshop, a virtual public orientation, then followed by a public charrette week, September 13th through 17th, where we actually held a couple of open design workshops per day, invited the public to come and give all of their feedback and input and incorporate that into some of that work in progress. That charrette week ended with a work in progress presentation where members of the public were invited to see the plan at that point. After that, we moved on to the draft phase, and we are now, after a really successful field visit from our consultants, Dover Cole & Partners, in January of this year, we now have a completed draft that has been available to the public for the entire month of April, open for public comments on a few of our different virtual website options that Rob from Dover Cole will go over first. Let me just take a minute there to do some quick introductions. I believe most of you know me, Joaquin Rodriguez with Capital Improvements Department Planning Group. I am the project manager for Onward Alameda, and our consulting team for this was Dover Cole & Partners. That name may be familiar to some of you all. They did some amazing work for the city of El Paso in the past with the Plan El Paso Comprehensive Plan. So Rob and Jason, if you all could introduce yourselves.
Great. Thank you, Joaquin, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Rob Kwiatkowski, Town Planner, Urban Designer, and Project Manager at Dover Cole & Partners.
And good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jason King with Dover Cole. I'm a principal of the company. I was one of the prime authors of this document and very proudly one of the prime authors of the Plan El Paso document. Thank you.
Great. So we are at the stage now where we have a completed draft. Again, as I said, it has been available to the public for some time. We've received some great comments and feedback, not only during this past month on the complete draft, but throughout the entire planning process, especially in the fall of last year when we were doing the bulk of our outreach. Go ahead, Rob, go to the next slide for us. All right. Okay, so that's, where I'll leave it off. We were lucky to have Dover Cole with us. It was a great team. And now I'll let Rob and Jason take over and give you an overview of the plan. And we are going to dive into not a ton of detail because we'd be here for probably a few days. But we will, hit on the high notes. And if you have any questions along the presentation, feel free to stop us. I don't know that we can see if hands are raised or anything like that. So feel free to just jump in. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joaquin. Again, my name is Rob Kwiatkowski with Dover Cole & Partners, and really happy to be here this afternoon. Thank you for your time for us to present this draft plan to you all. So the Corridor Master Plan really establishes a long-term vision for the future of the Alameda Corridor and how it should evolve in the coming years based on big picture ideas from the citizens of the area in the city. And it serves as a tool to evaluate new development proposals, direct capital improvements, and to guide public policy. So this is a bigger picture visioning document created in partnership with Joaquin and his team and the residents, business owners, and property owners along the corridor. And it will be a reference going forward for the zoning code update, for future Texas DOT designs for the street itself, and for other changes to development policy. So really setting the stage for what the zoning and development regulations should be and providing guidance on that. So when projects do come up in the future for development, they have a public document that they can be guided by. And it complements the city's previous investments. Sorry, my apologies. Complements the city's previous investments by aligning development regulations and incentives to further support TOD. which is really important. This is the study area, stretches all the way from downtown, 14.5 miles along Texas Avenue and Alameda Avenue to the border with Socorro. And this is looking at the area about a quarter mile to either side of Alameda, so the neighborhoods along the street. So while we do touch base and think about how the street itself can evolve, this is really more about what's happening on either side of the street, to the land and the development regulations and what those areas should become in the future, with a focus on the Brio Station locations. And as Joaquin mentioned, we had a really robust community planning process, and this is where
We lost you. We lost sound here.
My apologies. There was a ambulance or fire truck going by and it was quite loud. So the community planning process is really where we got the ideas for the plan and where they came from. That began with the project website. Has the link at the bottom of the screen. And the project website today has a story map component where all the ideas and recommendations from the plan have been compiled in an easy to read and easy to digest summary that's really interactive with a lot of graphics and visualizations to review. There's also the onwardalameda.com aspect of the website, which has been available since day one of the project. Here there's background information, opportunities to provide input through surveys, commenting on the draft plan, commenting on previous versions of the earlier drafts, as well as watching recordings of past events, including all of our meetings that Joaquin mentioned during the virtual Charrette Week. When we started in August of last year with the virtual workshop, we had a big kickoff meeting with maybe 70 or so members of the public coming in. We asked this question: which of the following are most important to you for a better Alameda Avenue area? And the ones that got the most responses were encouraging economic vitality, enhancing the corridor's aesthetics, and addressing flooding. And of course, other issues were important too: expanding housing choices, providing complete streets, and creating new centers. Then in September, we had our main event. This is our virtual charrette, where we set up a virtual studio for 1 week, had dozens of meetings with different stakeholders and technical groups and local residents. Here we had our hands-on design session where people were working in small groups with our designers, pointing out specific items and areas of concern and areas of interest along the map. And when we had our small group discussions, the main ideas that came up were improving community character and aesthetics, walkability, bikeability, transportation, shops, dining, and retail, and parks and civic places. We also did a one-word card, and this is the word cloud. And what the word cloud does is the more times a word is submitted or shown, the bigger it appears. And so we asked, what's one word that comes to mind about Alameda now? And you can see a lot of the words are not always very positive. So neglected, unkempt, car-oriented, and outdated. But you can also see potential and historic. So these are things that lead us to believe that there's a lot more to it. And that came to be when we asked, what's one word that comes to mind about Alameda in the future? And here you can see a very different selection of words: beautiful, boulevard, historical, mixed use. It's about time, not gentrified. These are the things that come up. And at the end of that week, we asked, do you think, when we presented the draft work, we asked, do you think the draft plan is on the right track? And of those in the meeting, 82% said yes or probably yes. After that, we came back to our offices and we worked on the plan. After we had some draft ideas, our team came to visit El Paso. We toured the corridor. We held in-person meetings. We spoke to elected officials, the Isleta del Sur Pueblo, the Texas Department of Transportation, Independent Automobile Dealers Association, and many others. And once the draft document was ready to be shared, we presented it to the Neighborhood Coalition, and we had a meeting just a few weeks ago on April 26th where we shared the document with them and got a lot of great feedback from them that we're working on incorporating. Throughout this process, we've spoken to over 300 different individuals and a whole selection of different entities and departments and community organizations and neighborhood associations. And from all that, we got the 5 big ideas of the plan. These form the 5 key chapters of the document, as well as guide the vision going forward. And they are to create complete and healthy neighborhoods with a variety of housing choices, reimagine streets as great public spaces, enhance mobility and increase connectivity, become a leader in green energy and address stormwater sustainably, create capacity and structure for implementing the plan, and build upon existing strengths and focus efforts. Jason King later will walk us through some of those in a little more detail. Chapter 1 of the document provides an introduction to the plan, the area and why the plan's being done, provides a brief history of the corridor, looks at previous plans and studies, including Plan El Paso, and how those relate to the current effort, and goes into a detailed analysis of the corridor, including housing costs, land use, zoning, stormwater issues, and urban design. Chapter 2 of the plan summarizes the planning process that we just walked through together, and again introduces the big 5 ideas. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jason King from Dover Cole & Partners to talk about some of the big ideas and what the plan envisions for those.
Thank you, Rob. So big idea 1, create complete and healthy neighborhoods with a variety of housing choices. And we'll just highlight a few of the goals in each of these. Increase housing options, maintain housing affordability, and create a healthy community. So increasing housing options is a big focus of the plan. When we did Plan El Paso roughly 10, 11 years ago, housing affordability wasn't the crisis that it is today. And so this plan focuses very much on housing options. The way we do this is to build more densely. And the way we build more densely, the optimal places are the areas that have been identified already for transit-oriented development. Future land use map changes, zoning changes, and development regulation changes. You see street trees added and pedestrian crosswalks. You see infill development that right now would be prohibited. And you see these things all happening, at the TOD areas. It's the spots where we focus the effort. The public and private effort would be focused at these TOD areas first. And the plan provides guidance on what these could look like. Infill housing. There's a discussion nationally about missing middle housing. It can't just be apartment buildings and single family houses anymore. We need the duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhomes that we used to build routinely, the accessory dwelling units. And in order to get that, the plan talks about reducing unit sizes, reducing lot sizes, and streamlining development approvals in select locations. The plan talks about not just the public realm, but also how we can incentivize private development. Reducing what is in the city's control. Things like reducing the parking requirements, or even changing the code to make it easier to adapt historic structures. And then in this sequence, you see a street turning into a plaza. If there's less parking required, and if there's a public funding source, perhaps the tourist funds, then it's possible to turn these little side streets, these perpendicular streets, into great public plazas. Again, affordability, there's no section in Plan El Paso labeled affordability. But here we're talking about all the zoning changes, the financing and funding changes. We're talking about using public land and really just focusing on creating new housing options while at the same time protecting tenants and protecting the existing businesses. In terms of the health of the community, we talk about how the closer you are to downtown, the more likely you are to have access to medical facilities and pharmacies, right? And it's how the land use regulations can change. There can be development agreements to try to bring more medical facilities and pharmacies into these areas that right now are underserved. Big idea 2, reimagine streets as great public spaces, enhance mobility, and increase connectivity. We'll just highlight improved transit access and service. This is a corridor that actually sees a high level of transit access and service. But there's still room for improvement. It's still a corridor that can be made more multimodal by expanding the pedestrian and the bike network. And this shows very specific interventions that could be made. You see in yellow on your screen, mid-block crossings, wider sidewalks, the zebra stripes of wide, safe crosswalks. So it's about the interventions that will make the place more walkable. Things that the Department of Transportation doesn't necessarily do automatically. The plan talks about turning travel lanes into pedestrian-friendly sidewalks and spots. Talks about converting on-street parking in places to dedicated bike facilities. It talks about creating continuous bike lanes. It's a long corridor. And so we took the time to draw in these TOD areas very specific designs for implementation. And so the vision for Alameda Avenue, if we just take one little area, sort of looks something like this, right? You see historic preservation, you see the public investment that leads to private investment, you see better streets, you see the bus-only lanes. It's a desert community. You can't put trees everywhere. There are serious water requirements, and so we need to be very strategic about where shade goes. But the TOD areas are the ideal places for that. The plan talks about how to plant in a way that conserves water. Become a leader in green energy and address stormwater sustainably. The plan talks about integrating sustainable design into standard practice with every new development project, a higher standard when it comes to environmental performance, and addressing stormwater. Each of the parks, there are several, urban parks that have been neglected just because El Paso is such a large place and just because this corridor goes south so far. And so this plan brings new attention to some of these parks, identifying improvements that could be made and even locations for new parks. And using walk circles, we're trying to get everyone within a 5-minute or 10-minute walk of a local neighborhood outdoor experience. And so the transit-oriented development, the TOD development, needs to be a green kind of development. It's not just about more lot coverage. It's about, in places, higher open space and turning and creating shade and fighting the heat island effect. And in beautiful renderings like this, it gives inspiration, really, for developers. Hopefully, staff and developers can take a look at the plan before they even begin to draw, and we can alleviate some of the problems that come when development feels like it's too late in the process. The plan talks about incorporating green street, bioretention, and permeable pavement, create new and expanded multifunctional park ponds, constructing underwater stormwater storage. These are things, and rain gardens, these are things that have been talked about in different plans that the city has approved. What this one does is it identifies specific locations for where these enhancements could go. And so, you find stormwater ponds like this in the plan. Designers have imagined them as amenities, fully utilized recreational, even commercial amenities that still serve the important stormwater retention and filtration purposes, but just thought about a little bit more. Maybe they can also be recreational places. They could be economic development places. Big idea 4, create capacity and structure for implementing the plan. This talks specifically about how zoning can be used. It talks about the current uses that are there. For instance, this is a corridor with a lot of automotive uses, how those areas could be enhanced, how you can work with the automotive shop owners in a way that retains them, but still makes things more walkable and pedestrian friendly. And the plan talks a lot about historic preservation as an economic engine, as much as a responsibility. So there are, I think one of the things Joaquin pushed us to do is to create case studies to specific places that you could go on Google Maps and you could see where plan principles were implemented. And so if we talk about form-based codes that create transit-oriented development, we talk about specific spot. On the right, you see South Miami, a spot that we've worked on before. It's an area that's walkable, mixed use, and pedestrian friendly, but also it has a high number of permanent affordable units in a multi-story mixed use environment. And so it just talks about how that can happen. Along the corridor, there are a lot of automotive uses. And these are job centers, right? These are small business job centers employing a large portion of the community. They are to be retained and valued. Yet there are certain spots where automotive uses are less than optimal. The plan doesn't push anyone out. The plan allows everyone to stay. However, certain transit-oriented development spots, it recommends allowing more options, allowing more uses. It's possible that the owner of an auto body shop might just sell to someone who's interested in doing something that's a little more conducive to the walkable Main Street vision. And so the plan talks about how you get there. Historic preservation, we talk about the existing historic districts. We also talk about buildings that are on the edge that need to be looked at for either a national or basically a national designation. And then maybe once in a while there's a cluster which we should consider for a new local historic district. And we talk about the economic development tools that the city has that uses well, that brought back and revitalized the downtown, and how those tools can be used along the corridor as well. And the new tools, there's new tools like community benefit agreements. They sort of allow a negotiation that currently is not allowed when big developments come forward, just like we saw in the last item that was discussed by the commission. So it's an interesting part of the plan. Community benefit agreements, how they work and how it can benefit everyone. Big idea 5, build upon existing strengths and focus efforts on a few places. So again, it's about prioritizing investment. You see a map of tiers. The downtown, the area closer to the downtown has the largest population. It's probably the most logical place to begin. Tier 4 is the traditional, is the transit-oriented development infill areas. This is a secondary spot where things would begin to happen. And then there's a whole lot of corridor you really just don't even want to touch. They're stable, small businesses and homes that people have lived in relatively affordably for a long time. The secret, the hardest thing about urban planning is knowing when to stop. But in the age of gentrification, we've got to be careful about where we make changes and the areas that we preserve. The plan is about protecting and enhancing. So in certain areas, let's say closer to the downtown, the transformation is a little bit more dramatic, right? These are the spots that are most likely to have larger buildings, new units, new opportunities. There's where we talk about historic preservation in some spots, and others, it's about building high and building larger than before. And so these are the funnest areas for our team to draw, right? We're able to draw pretty easily a couple $1 billion worth of investment. That's also involves missing middle housing types and great plazas, places for people to be, walkable streets, sort of a new paradigm. Ascate Park and Delta Drive is one of the main intersections, one of the spots the community identified as the place most ripe for change. And so we took the time with real lot sizes and real building widths to draw what's possible in these areas. And Isleta, historic Isleta, is everybody's favorite area, I think, on the Mission Trail, and it's an area that that needs specific focus, right? This is one of the oldest parts of El Paso, of Texas, and it's an area that's been neglected for a long time. The plan creates a beautiful and compelling vision that we co-drew with community members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. We just have a couple more slides to wrap this up. We'll just be just 2 more minutes. So all those ideas that Jason talked about and I introduced, they all take a lot of steps, and there's a lot of action items to get to that. And so while this plan's showing these renderings and these visions, maybe they're 5, 10, 15, or 20 years out, they're not actual proposals for specific development projects. So what the plan does is it includes a very detailed implementation matrix that shows for each of those big ideas, the specific goals, strategies, and then action items, the things that the planning department or city council or others can look at and check off as they go through the process of implementing this plan or a similar plan. It includes what that item should be, who should be the responsible party for starting that, if you want to find more information, where in the plan to reference. And then, as Jason mentioned, the investment sector, not all the strategies and action items applied across the entire 14.5 miles. Some areas should remain as is, other areas should have a little more focus in terms of implementing transit-oriented development. And so it talks about where along the corridor those action items should be pursued. And then it also provides high-level timeframe and cost estimate for those action items. And so this is really the checklist or the to-do list for implementing the plan. So all the big ideas all condensed into this last chapter. And with that, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to our presentation. And Jason and I and Joaquin are all available for taking questions and comments. So thank you again.
Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it. Anyone have any questions?
I have a couple questions. I know that TxDOT did their own quarter study, along Alameda, and I guess I'm just wondering, the TxDOT, what was their take on your plan? I mean, are they similar, their plan to your plan? I mean, how are those two plans? Are we in the same direction?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Reyes. That's a great question. So we've met with TxDOT numerous times throughout the course of the study. Actually, as recently as yesterday, myself and Tony from Street Plans, one of the sub-consultants at Dover Cole, we met with TxDOT to discuss their plan and how it would connect with our plan. Their plan has been on hold for about 2 years due to COVID. A number of TxDOT plans, as you may know, have been on hold for a long time. Going over some of our proposals, some of our drawings, I think in spirit, TxDOT does support the things that we're proposing. There are certain things that ultimately TxDOT will always have some hesitation towards. One of the main things is street trees, right? TxDOT is not a big proponent of street trees along the sides of their highways for, in their words, safety and maintenance concerns. But ultimately, looking back at our public process, one of the main things that we heard from the community was that Alameda used to be a tree-lined street. The word Alameda itself refers to a tree-lined street. So that's not something that we could ignore. I think the takeaway is that we will inevitably have some disagreement with TxDOT on some of these long-term vision items. But part of our responsibility is to continue to push that envelope and hope that TxDOT can come along for that ride eventually. Again, these are long-term vision items. These aren't streets that we plan to go out and start improving tomorrow. There are no funds allocated. There are no funds identified even. So the hope is that we set that vision and that in the years to come, both the city and TxDOT and all other stakeholders can work to achieve that vision.
I read through the report and I like the vision. I like your whole. It's very thorough, but I'm just concerned that if TxDOT's not really, I guess a partner in it, it's not going to happen. I mean that's. I mean obviously it's going to cost a lot of money. It's the state highway, and we need TxDOT to be a partner in this in order for to make this happen. So are you all going to look for an approval? I mean, what's going to be the end? What type of approval you're looking for TxDOT? I'm just trying to figure out how these coming together.
So I don't think there'll be any request for approval from TxDOT. We're still awaiting their formal comments on the plan. I think ultimately, and we've been very clear with the public about this so that they have realistic expectations. Our purview over Alameda itself is very limited, right? But these strategies, especially as they, as we refer to sort of the mobility items in the plan, those strategies apply not just to Alameda, but to parallel and perpendicular streets where the city does have purview over design. So we'll continue to work with TxDOT as we do, almost daily here in our department. We'll continue to work with them on a lot of these issues, a lot of these items, specifically to the sort of landscaping and tree elements that we've included in the plan. A lot of that is just cooperation on our part and a commitment from our elected officials to sort of put the money forward for that shared maintenance agreement. So there are a lot of different solutions, a lot of different strategies we can employ to achieve this vision and to work hand in hand with TxDOT. I don't think we should give the impression that it's, that it's sort of a deal breaker, anything that we've drawn. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in our coordination, and I think that part of the plan is, part of implementation of the plan is dedicating ourselves and making a commitment to that continued cooperation.
I mean,
Thank you.
Maybe there's a appendix that talks about the political will of people representing us at the state level to allocate funding and MOUs with TxDOT, because I think I'm not the only one that notices that TxDOT treats us a little bit like a stepchild that's living in another house about 500 miles away. But go ahead.
Yeah. A colony, you could say, as to how we're treated. Let me say that I found the plan, I read through it, and now I heard your presentation, and I'm very enthusiastic about this. It's very exciting, and there's so many good ideas in here. And I have 3 constructive, I think, questions about it all. I'm really interested in making the future development as green as possible, and you do mention solar in the plan. And so I wonder how we can either incentivize or even require, if that's possible, solar installations. Is there a way to incentivize? Is there money available? I know I read in the newspaper, and I've seen it launched, talked about also at the Eco El Paso conference, that there's a new cooperative between the city, Sunrise, and Eco El Paso to try to get people more comfortable about honest movements forward for solar installations and have their questions answered. So is there money available to incentivize solar installations for any new energy developments, and or is it possible to require a kind of green zone establishment in this corridor?
Yeah, so those are really great questions. And so I think the plan takes the approach of looking at the zoning and ensuring that solar panels, whether they're rooftop or located on the ground, as well as solar hot water heaters, that they're not prohibited by any of the zoning or development regulations. A lot of times they'll need to be lifted up above the roof, and so you run into issues in many cases with height requirements. So the plan recognizes that. The challenge is working within the state law in terms of how much you can require of developments to incorporate green infrastructure like this. But there are a lot of case studies, and the plan mentions a few where a lot of cities, such as where we're located, our office in South Miami, and then another place we're working in Somerville in Massachusetts, have programs where in some of those cases they require it, and they also provide funding and grants. So this would have to be something that the city recognizes as a priority and works with other entities, whether they're nonprofit or state or federal grants, to secure this funding, because it will add some upfront cost to the development as well, or to a homeowner. But the long-term cost savings and the environmental benefits are worth it. And so we do talk about different strategies for building upon those type of programs and establishing a similar one in El Paso.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even such simple things as encouraging light-colored roofs as people re-roof their homes as a way to reflect the heat, for example. My second question relates to the community benefits agreements. I've been involved in, I was involved in a HUD grant a while ago. We did some field visits to Chicago. And I've also been at a local progress conference last year and heard some of the Chicago alder people talk about community benefits agreements that involve negotiating with neighborhoods to employ a certain percentage of people from those neighborhoods, given the sometimes higher unemployment rates for living wage jobs in marginalized neighborhoods. The Chicago Neighborhood Association that I remember interacting with had a 30% requirements for hiring within the district that they were building in. Is that sort of thing in your minds? Is that sort of thing possible in a state like this?
So this is Jason King. Yeah, so community benefits agreement is a new tool in the world of urban planning, born in the early 1990s in California. And now we see community benefit agreements everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They've been validated by the courts at every level. And just as you point out, that's right, it allows a negotiation. Mm-hmm. The bigger the development, the bigger the impact on the community, the more the municipality is able to ask for from the development, from the developer. And so, right, so you point out, and it's open-ended. So, I mean, in terms of plan goals, it could be, right, to employ more locals. It could be that a small area within a new commercial building and have a space for a locally owned business. It could be affordable housing. It could be solar panels. So the plan explores this, talks about it. What would happen next is the city would pursue a community benefits agreement ordinance. And then, you know, your city attorney would figure out what are the parameters, what can be asked for. But this is starting that conversation.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and you know the political will question is certainly an important one. And any way that I can personally be a part of that, I will happily join in. My third question has to do with the historic district. I'm aware that the county makes available, I think they have federal grant money that can be matched on redevelopment for historic districts, like in South El Paso. And I think there's been some resistance in the downtown area to that, but I'm just wondering what kind of partnership you might be able to develop with the county in extending historic districts to the Onward Alameda corridor.
Good point. So one thing we don't talk about enough with historic districts are the tax credits that make the districts make possible and that designations make possible. There are federal, state, and county tax benefits to remodeling historic structures if you stay within the guidelines. So this plan has a detailed conversation about that. You know, again, we posit historic preservation as an economic development tool, as a good thing, which makes redevelopment even more possible. And if you follow the county's work in the last 5 years, there's been a sort of an unprecedented number of historic structures have been preserved, and there's even been new federal designations. So right now, and the pendulum swings back and forth, but right now, this is a good time for talking about preservation, incentivizing it, designating new structures, and maybe even creating small local districts.
Oh, great. That's good to hear. If there is anything that I was semi-critical about in the plan, I don't want to, be critical. I want to be as constructive as I can. I kind of worried when there was discussion about extending the trolley to the medical center area, partly because I remember trying to drive on Stanton Street in the years that the trolley rails were laid, and then the lack of use, I hate to say, of the trolley. Maybe it's picking up a little bit more, but I think the trolley for me is an issue. Just something to think about. You don't have to answer that. And then a final little footnote question is, what is a permeable pavement?
Yeah, so permeable pavement can be, there's different types of asphalt and different types of paver blocks that you can lay down, and the water is able to infiltrate through that material and into the groundwater. So it's a way of reducing runoff from storm events.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you very much.
Just one comment. Thank you very much. As a member having lived in the Alameda area and Carolina for many years, the deterioration of that area has astounded me. I really appreciate what you've presented. My question is, what is the next step after having put this plan together? How can we as individuals help, and what is the next steps that need to be taken?
Yeah, so a big part of this, and then I'll turn it over to Joaquin, I think he'll be able to explain a little bit more, is really setting off that initial vision. So the plan itself won't accomplish anything until people take the actions, like yourselves and the city. So setting this ambitious vision can really give the city the tools it needs and the community-supported document to help go to Texas DOT and say, this is what the community has agreed to, this is what they want, how can we get to as close of this as we can? And this will also inform a lot of the upcoming city initiatives that Joaquin is working on.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think that's absolutely true. And if you look at, I want to say it's chapter 8 of the
the plan that focuses on implementation. We had asked Dover Cole to really dive into creating an implementation matrix. So it identifies steps that the city will take and that other partners will take. It actually identifies who those partners are, who those city departments are. It establishes short-term, midterm, and long-term implementation steps. So really, at this juncture, once the plan is adopted, it's incumbent on us as city staff to start to implement some of these steps, having received sort of that formal direction from not only City Plan Commission, but from City Council when they ultimately take action on this plan. You'll see some of those short-term steps are things like starting to look at TOD zoning, using overlays, starting to look at the automotive uses and how we can make those, how we can enhance those uses within their existing areas. Those are the short-term steps that are, low-hanging fruit, you might say. These are things that we can do through administrative changes to our processes, through code amendments that don't require the hiring of consultants. They don't require long-term funding commitments. That they don't require us to go much further than the resources that we already have available to us. So those are the first steps that you'll start to see as we move forward with implementation of the plan after formal adoption by City Council.
Thank you very much. Wonderful plan.
And it's also important for residents and community members along the corridor to use this plan. So when new projects come in, or they want to have another tool to advocate for improving their park or improving a street, this is a great document for them to have and to utilize. And it will really take the communities along the corridor as well, working and looking to advance the plan, and as well as working with the city.
I have a comment. We've been talking about transit-oriented development here for a decade. Not much, but it's a streetcar, Brio 1 or Brio Mesa, whatever you call that. The improvements were put in, the public improvements, but the development that TOD promises did not materialize. And I think part of that is because you have big-time developers in this town that do not want to necessarily partner with government on a deal like that. But is there, or could there be a consideration for like a micro TOD where, especially on Alameda, you need a low entry point for someone to take a risk with a big incentive from the city, the kind of big incentives that the city gives to the larger developers. Because if TOD didn't work downtown where we did art space or on the streetcar route, I don't see it working on Alameda. So, I mean, I think that maybe another innovative, new, tailored to El Paso TOD plan, would be beneficial, because I don't see it happening in 10, 20 years. I love the idea of TOD, but I don't know that El Paso is fertile ground for that. But otherwise, I love the plan.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism. I think one thing that the plan recognizes and talks about is that TOD is more than just putting a bus stop somewhere and hoping for the best, right? There are a lot of steps that need to happen after that or before that even to really encourage people to, as you said, make that risk. A lot of those steps come from changes to our existing zoning ordinance, right? Specifically for things like parking requirements. Currently there's no difference in your parking requirements whether you're next door to a Brio stop or in Far East, auto-oriented development in El Paso. So some of those changes are proposed in the plan. Some of our implementation steps are going to focus on working with Philip and his team and coming up with some, again, low-hanging fruit, common sense sort of amendments we can make to our ordinance to support development in those areas. We need to ensure that our ordinances and our development standards aren't hurdles for folks who are willing to make that investment, but that we can support them in doing that.
That's right. It's go ahead, Jason.
Well, just let me suggest that it's true. Tens of millions was invested with Brio, 29 new stations. And really, if you look at it, there has not been a lot of change. There's not been a lot of transit-oriented development. and we puzzled over this. What we learned talking to transit providers and talking to small businesses, however, was that new transit was a lifeline. It brought new customers. It kept places alive that would have died otherwise. So in that area, median household income stayed pretty much the same. There was not, through COVID, a high level of vacancies. So it's, you never see the good that something does. You never see how public investments stabilize places. But I just want to suggest that's what your transit investments have done. And the only other thing I'll say, just having done this for a long time, is that it takes a while for transit investments to translate into private investment. The example I always point to where it wasn't the case was the streetcar. Along Oregon Street, the streetcar, wherever that streetcar goes, there's new buildings popping up. Well, with BRT, it just takes longer. I hate to say that, but I've seen it in other places.
And if you are talking about rewriting codes, please bring our planning department along. It's a reoccurring theme that, we need to update the codes here. And we've got a low impact development, green infrastructure subcommittee that would be glad to tag along to add recommendations to whatever rewrites you all are doing. And if that includes us advocating with City Council for that funding and expressing the importance of that, I personally would be glad to talk to Mayor and Council about that. Thank you all. Any other?
No, absolutely. I don't want to give the impression that, City 3 and the planning group hasn't been part of this process. They've reviewed our drafts. Some of their staff attended our charrette week and our kickoff presentations last year. So definitely, once this is adopted and we move on to implementation, it really is going to be a heavy lift for them to start working on some of this stuff. And our department here, planning and CID, we're committed to working together. Whatever support they need, we're here to provide that. If there are no other questions, I do believe that Fabiola Campos, the president of the City of El Paso Neighborhood Coalition, is on the phone. Ms. Campos, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Joaquin. Good afternoon, CPC commissioners and city staff. I've been hearing attentively what you are saying, and I'll be repeating myself, but now it's my turn. My name is Fabiola Campos Lopez. I'm the chair for El Paso Neighborhood Coalition, but I'm mainly calling today as the president of the Corridor Civic Association in the Mission Valley, and as a resident who lives close by Alameda and drives it almost daily. CID project manager, Mr. Joaquin Rodriguez, has continuously informing us of every advance in the Onward Alameda corridor study. Likewise, all citywide neighborhood association leaders had been informed of all these advances in the study. Unfortunately, pandemic has not helped, and it has been very hard for the community to attend the several in-person meetings hosted and offered by CID. Last April, the coalition planning areas representatives from the Central and Mission Valley held a special virtual meeting collaborating with CID and the project consultants. Even though all citywide neighborhood associations were invited via email, the emphasis was on calling every neighborhood association leader that resides along Alameda and use it in their daily commute. And we did. 60 neighborhood associations from Familias Unidas del Chamizal all the way to the Valle de las Misiones Neighborhood Association presidents were called. The meeting was a success. 10 neighborhood association presidents attended the meeting with 20 participants in total. Lots of questions were answered by the project consultants and by Mr. Rodriguez. The presentation was a concise overview of the extended study. The longitude of the Alameda corridor acknowledges that needs and improvements had to be divided into sections due to the different street infrastructure, connectivity, surroundings, and community needs. The section from Texas Avenue connecting Alameda, passing through Jefferson High School up to Fox Plaza Shopping Center. It recognizes the frequent use of public transportation in the area and the proposal of more housing options, creating better connectivity and improving the quality of life for the neighborhoods in that area and its residents. From Fox Plaza Shopping Center to around Yarborough Avenue, the study recognizes safer connectivity like improvements on sidewalks, more frequent crosswalks, better and modern street signage, improvements on street drainage, and address stormwater preservation. Recommended the business in the area to enhance their business frontage with more shade and green spaces. This at the same time will attract other business diversity to the area that has been very reserved. From Yarborough to the Valley, in that area, the finding the needs are similar to the rest sections, like increased connectivity, frequent crosswalk, better street signage, improvements to the business frontage area, protection of green spaces, and creation of shaded areas. Also highlighting the historic buildings and trails that already exist. How can this be implemented? First, we need to recognize that Alameda Corridor is a state road. Then the effort is a mutual collaboration between the city and Texas DOT. Some of the primary purposes of the Onward Alameda Corridor study are to beautify, connect, and enhance the neighborhoods along Alameda. The means can vary, but it can be started by providing investment incentives and updating land planning and development.
Ms. Campos-Lopez,
Thank you
you've
for
reached your
Yes,
3 minutes.
I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for allowing me to share the study findings from the city's perspective. I want to finish by thanking Mr. Rodriguez and the group of study consultants for their personalized community outreach, especially to the community that the changes will highly impact. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Joaquin.
Thank you. So a huge thank you to Ms. Campos Lopez. She was really pivotal in a lot of our outreach efforts. In connecting with this community during COVID was a real challenge, but I feel confident that that we put forth our best effort, and this really is a community-driven plan. So if there are any other questions, we're here to answer that. If you have any other questions in the coming weeks as we start to prepare this for City Council, feel free to reach out to myself, and I'll get those questions answered for you. But that's all we have for you today. Thank you for your time. I know this is a really big topic and a really complex topic that is difficult to put into a few PowerPoint slides. So hopefully the resources that we've got available online, you all were able to really dive in. That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great job, guys. Okay.
This is an action item. Sure.
Can I
We
get
need a recommendation to forward to council.
You're the action man today. Make a recommendation to City Council.
I make a motion to approve the
Make a
Alameda Corridor.
recommendation. It's a recommendation to City Council.
Okay. I'll make a motion to make a recommendation to, concur with the Alameda Corridor study.
Approve and adopt will work for us.
Approve and adopt.
Oh, I'm sorry, to approve and adopt the Alameda Corridor study.
Stout, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good
Appreciate
one.
it. Okay, I believe we're wrapped. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, Stout.
Second, Guzman.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you all.